I am Cassandra, 32 years old, and I never thought I would have to choose between my son and my family. For years, I endured my sister Melanie's outbursts, but when she crossed the line and struck my 6-year-old son with a belt for spilling juice, something inside me finally broke. My parents defended her as always, laughing off my concerns and snatching my phone when I tried to call for help. If you are watching this, please let me know where you are from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to follow my journey of finally standing up for what is right. My story begins long before that terrible day with the belt. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Ohio, our family looked picture-perfect from the outside. My father, Harold, worked as a bank manager, stern and particular about maintaining appearances. My mother, Eleanor, dedicated herself to being the perfect homemaker, though her version of perfection had always been selective. Then there was my sister Melanie, 3 years older than me, whom my parents treated like the sun their world revolved around. From my earliest memories, Melanie had been given special treatment. When we were children, she received new clothes while I wore her hand-me-downs. For her 10th birthday, my parents transformed our backyard into a carnival, complete with rented games and a cotton candy machine. For my 10th birthday, 3 years later, I got a simple cake and a few presents with the explanation that money was tight right now. It never seemed to be tight when Melanie wanted something. The pattern continued throughout our school years. My parents attended every one of Melanie's soccer games, cheering loudly from the sidelines, but frequently missed my debate competitions even when I made it to state finals. I still remember standing on that stage, scanning the audience for familiar faces, and feeling the sharp sting of disappointment when I realized no one had come. Later, my mother would explain that Melanie had needed help picking out a prom dress, as if that justified missing one of the proudest moments of my life. Melanie developed a personality to match her upbringing. Entitled and manipulative, she learned early that tears and tantrums would get her whatever she wanted. By high school, she had refined her techniques. She became adept at taking credit for other people's work, including mine. When I spent weeks creating a family photo album for our parents' anniversary, Melanie casually mentioned at the celebration that we had made it, though she had contributed nothing. My parents praised her thoughtfulness while I stood in the background, invisible as always. What made everything worse was how Melanie expected everyone to cater to her needs regardless of their own. If she called at midnight needing a ride, everyone was expected to jump. If she wanted the last piece of cake at a family gathering, it was automatically hers. My parents never questioned this arrangement with my father, often justifying it with statements like, "Your sister is more sensitive than you, Cassandra. You can handle disappointment better." My mother would simply shrug and say, "It is easier this way," which I eventually realized meant easier for them, not for me. I developed coping mechanisms to survive in this environment. I became a people pleaser, always putting others' needs before my own. I avoided conflict at all costs, swallowing my objections, rather than face the collective disapproval of my family. I constantly sought validation from others, since I rarely received it at home. These traits followed me into adulthood, affecting my relationships and my sense of self-worth. Things began to change when I met Ryan during my senior year of college. Unlike my family, Ryan truly saw me, and valued what he saw. He encouraged me to stand up for myself and helped me recognize the unhealthy patterns in my family relationships. After graduation, we married, and I began the slow process of building my confidence and establishing boundaries with my family. When our son Noah was born 6 years ago, I felt a fierce protectiveness I had never experienced before. I promised myself that he would never feel the way I had growing up, that he would always know his worth and feel unconditionally loved. Ryan and I created a warm, loving home where Noah flourished, curious and joyful. My relationship with my family remained complicated. I limited our visits, and Ryan often served as a buffer during family gatherings. Still, I held on to the hope that becoming an aunt might soften Melanie, that seeing Noah might awaken some warmth in her. That hope proved tragically misplaced. Melanie remained single and childless by choice, frequently making comments about how children were life ruiners and how she preferred her freedom. She treated Noah with a strange mixture of disinterest and criticism, often pointing out his minor infractions to me as evidence of my permissive parenting. My parents, rather than defending their grandson, would usually agree with her assessment, suggesting I needed to be firmer with him. Despite these tensions, I continued making efforts to maintain family connections, wanting Noah to know his grandparents and aunt despite their flaws. I believed that with enough time and patience, things might improve. I believed we could find a new balance that respected my role as Noah's mother while honoring our family bonds. I could not have been more wrong. Last month, Ryan had to travel for a week-long business conference, leaving Noah and me on our own. Normally, we would have been fine, but I received an urgent call from work about a crisis with one of my major clients that required my immediate attention. As a marketing consultant working from home, I rarely face such emergencies, but this particular situation threatened to cost my company a valuable contract. With no time to find a regular babysitter, I reluctantly called my mother to ask if she could watch Noah for a few hours. She agreed enthusiastically, seemingly pleased to have time with her grandson. I should have recognized the warning signs when she mentioned that Melanie would be there too, having just returned from a vacation that had not gone as planned. My sister was always at her worst when things did not go her way. Still, I was desperate and convinced myself it would be fine. Noah was a well-behaved child, and it would only be for a few hours. I dropped him off at my parents' house with his backpack full of activities, his favorite stuffed dinosaur, and clear instructions about his routine. I specifically mentioned that he had already had lunch, but might want a snack in the afternoon, preferably something not too sugary, as it tended to make him overexcited. "We know how to take care of a child, Cassandra," my mother said with that familiar dismissive tone. "We raised two of our own, remember." I bit back the urge to point out the differences in how those two children had been raised and simply thanked her for helping. Noah gave me a big hug before racing off to show his grandfather a new trick he had learned on his tablet. I left with a nagging sense of unease, but pushed it aside to focus on my work emergency. The client crisis took longer to resolve than expected. What should have been a 2-hour fix stretched to nearly 4, as we discovered additional problems that needed immediate attention. Throughout this time, I received no calls or texts from my parents, which I took as a good sign. Finally, with the situation stabilized, I packed up my laptop and headed back to collect Noah. As I pulled into my parents' driveway, I noticed Melanie's bright red sports car parked haphazardly, taking up more space than necessary, so typical of her general approach to life. I could hear raised voices from inside the house as I approached the front door. My heart rate immediately accelerated and I quickened my pace. The scene that greeted me when I entered the living room stopped me cold. Noah was huddled in a corner of the sofa, tears streaming down his face, his body curled protectively inward. My mother stood in the center of the room, hands on her hips, while my father sat in his recliner, newspaper lowered just enough to observe the situation. Melanie was pacing back and forth, her face flushed with anger, gesturing wildly with her hands. "What is going on here?" I demanded, rushing to Noah's side. He immediately launched himself into my arms, his small body trembling. "Your son," Melanie spat the word as if it tasted bad in her mouth, knocked over his juice all over my new white blouse. "Do you have any idea how much this cost? And he did it on purpose?" I looked at Noah, who shook his head vehemently. "It was an accident, Mommy," he whispered. I said sorry, but Aunt Melanie got really mad. "It was just a little spill," my mother interjected, though her tone suggested she sided with Melanie. "But Noah does need to be more careful with his things." I noticed then that Noah's favorite dinosaur toy lay on the floor, one arm nearly detached. "What happened to Rexy?" I asked quietly. Fresh tears welled in Noah's eyes. Aunt Melanie threw him because she said I was not listening. A cold fury began building inside me. "You threw his toy because of an accidental spill." Melanie rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, stop being so precious about it. Kids need to learn consequences. That is how the real world works." "He is 6 years old," I said, through gritted teeth, already standing and gathering Noah's belongings. "And you do not get to decide what consequences my son faces for accidents." My father finally lowered his newspaper completely. "Your sister is just trying to help, Cassandra. You coddle the boy too much." The familiar dismissal of my feelings, the automatic taking of Melanie's side regardless of the situation, it was all so predictable. Yet something felt different this time. Perhaps it was the way Noah clung to me, or perhaps some protective instinct that had been building for years had finally reached its breaking point. Whatever the reason, I found myself responding with a firmness that surprised even me. "Noah and I are leaving. Thank you for watching him, but clearly this is not working out." As I turned to go, Melanie muttered something under her breath that sounded suspiciously like "ungrateful bitch." I pretended not to hear, focusing instead on getting Noah safely to the car. I would deal with my family later when Noah was not present, and when I had better control of my emotions. The drive home was quiet with Noah subdued in his booster seat. When I asked gentle questions about his afternoon, he revealed that things had been tense even before the juice incident. Melanie had criticized his drawing, calling it sloppy, and had complained about having to watch Daniel Tiger on television instead of her preferred reality shows. My mother had offered little protection occasionally, telling Melanie to take it easy, but generally allowing her behavior to continue unchecked. That night, after tucking Noah into bed with extra stories and reassurances, I called Ryan to fill him in on what had happened. His anger was immediate and justified. "That is it," he said firmly. "No more unsupervised time with your family. I have been saying for years that they treat both of you terribly, and this proves it." I agreed with him in principle, but still felt conflicted about cutting ties completely. They were still family after all, and despite everything, I wanted Noah to have grandparents in his life. We agreed to take a break for a few weeks and reassess after Ryan returned from his trip. Little did I know that the worst was yet to come, and that my hesitation to establish firm boundaries would have devastating consequences. 3 days after the juice incident, my client crisis resurged, requiring another emergency work session. With Ryan still away and my regular backup babysitters unavailable, I found myself in an impossible situation. After exhausting all other options, I reluctantly called my mother again, explaining my predicament. "We would be happy to have Noah again," she said, her tone suspiciously cheerful. "And do not worry about last time. Melanie feels terrible about overreacting. She even bought him a little present to apologize." Against my better judgment, but with no alternatives, I agreed to bring Noah over. This time I sat him down beforehand and had a serious conversation. "If anything makes you uncomfortable or if anyone is mean to you, I want you to call me right away." I told him, making sure he knew how to use my old phone that I had programmed with just my number for emergencies. "You will not be in trouble for calling, I promise." Noah nodded solemnly, tucking the phone into his pocket. "I will be good, Mommy." "You are always good," I assured him, hugging him tightly. Sometimes grown-ups are the ones who behave badly. When we arrived at my parents' house, Melanie greeted us at the door with an obviously forced smile. She handed Noah a small wrapped package which contained a plastic dinosaur far too young for his age. Still, Noah thanked her politely, his good manners, a testament to the values Ryan and I had instilled in him. I repeated my instructions to my parents, emphasizing that I would only be gone for 2 hours at most, and that Noah had the phone to call me if needed. My father waved away my concerns while my mother assured me everything would be fine. Melanie remained silent, scrolling through her phone with apparent disinterest. With extreme reluctance, I left for my emergency meeting, checking my phone obsessively throughout. No calls came, which I hoped meant things were going well. I wrapped up my work as quickly as possible and headed back to my parents' house, finishing in under 2 hours as promised. The scene that greeted me upon my return will haunt me for the rest of my life. I heard the screaming before I even reached the front door. Noah's terrified wails mixed with Melanie's enraged shouting and my mother's ineffectual pleas for calm. I burst through the door without knocking to find Noah cowering under the dining room table, his arms raised protectively over his head. Melanie stood over him, my father's leather belt gripped in her hand, her face contorted with rage. My mother hovered nearby, wringing her hands but making no move to intervene. My father was nowhere to be seen. "What the hell are you doing?" I screamed, diving under the table to gather Noah into my arms. His face was streaked with tears, his eyes wide with terror. "Teaching him some respect," Melanie snarled, still clutching the belt. He spilled his juice again all over the new rug this time, and when I told him to clean it up, he talked back to me. "I did not," Mommy Noah sobbed into my shoulder. I said I was sorry and I tried to clean it, but she started yelling and I got scared. I noticed then the wet spot on the rug, a small juice glass overturned nearby, and a handful of paper towels scattered around, clear evidence of Noah's attempt to clean up his mess. "So you decided to beat him with a belt?" I was shaking with rage and fear, holding Noah tightly against me. "Oh, stop being so dramatic," my mother finally spoke up. "It was just a little discipline. We got the belt all the time as kids and we turned out fine." "Speak for yourself," I muttered, checking Noah for injuries. Through his thin t-shirt, I could see angry red welts forming on his upper back and arms. The sight of those marks on my child's body ignited something primal within me. I pulled out my phone and began dialing 911. "What are you doing?" My mother's voice rose in panic. "Calling the police," I replied, my finger hovering over the call button. "What Melanie did is assault. It is child abuse." My mother lunged forward with surprising speed, snatching the phone from my hand. "Do not be ridiculous. You cannot call the police on your own sister. It will ruin her life." "She beat my son with a belt," I shouted, trying to grab my phone back while keeping Noah secure in my other arm. "It was just a belt," my mother laughed nervously, holding my phone out of reach. "Kids need discipline. You are raising a brat, Cassandra. You should thank your sister for trying to instill some manners in him." At that moment, my father walked in from the garage, taking in the scene with a frown. "What is all this commotion about?" I quickly explained what had happened, expecting, despite years of disappointment, that surely this time he would take my side. Surely the physical abuse of his grandson would cross a line even he could not ignore. I was wrong. "Sounds like the boy needed some correction," he said dismissively. "In my day, this would not even be a discussion. Children respected their elders or faced the consequences." Something inside me broke at that moment, hearing my father condone violence against his own grandson. The last thread of hope that my family might someday change, that they might someday truly love Noah and me, snapped completely. "Give me back my phone," I said to my mother, my voice deadly calm. "Not until you calm down and stop overreacting," she replied, still clutching it tightly. I reached into Noah's pocket and pulled out the emergency phone I had given him earlier. "Noah, go wait in the car and lock the doors," I instructed him. "I will be right there." He hesitated, clearly afraid to leave me alone with them. "It is okay, baby. Go on now." I gave him a gentle push toward the door. Once he was safely outside, I turned back to my family phone in hand. "I am calling the police," I stated flatly. "What Melanie did is a crime. If you try to stop me, I will add obstruction of justice to the report." "You would not dare," Melanie snarled, but I could see fear beginning to replace the anger in her eyes. "Watch me," I replied, already dialing. "You beat a 6-year-old child with a belt hard enough to leave welts. That is not discipline. It is abuse, and I will not protect you anymore. If you do this, you are no longer part of this family." My father threatened, his face reddening. I looked at him steadily, a lifetime of hurt and disappointment, crystallizing into a moment of perfect clarity. If being part of this family means allowing my child to be abused, then I do not want to be part of it anymore. The operator answered, and I reported what had happened. My voice surprisingly steady. I gave our location and confirmed that Noah was safe with me in the car. They promised to send officers immediately. As I walked out the door, my mother called after me, her voice breaking. "Cassandra, please, think about what this will do to our family, to Melanie's career." I turned back one last time. "I am thinking about my family. Noah is my family, and I will protect him at all costs, even from you." The look of shock on their faces as I walked away told me they had never expected this outcome. They had no idea what I would do next, had never imagined I would finally stand up to them. But for Noah, I found strength I never knew I had. The next few hours passed in a blur of police reports, photographs of Noah's injuries, and tearful explanations. The responding officers were kind but professional, documenting everything carefully. One female officer named Sarah took special care with Noah, speaking to him gently and letting him play with her badge while I gave my statement. "You did the right thing, ma'am," she told me quietly, while her partner interviewed my parents and Melanie separately. "Too many people stay silent about family abuse because of exactly the pressure you described." Her validation meant more than she could know, a stark contrast to the gaslighting I had endured from my family for years. When the officers informed me that they would be arresting Melanie for child abuse, the reality of the situation hit me fully. Despite everything, some part of me still struggled with the idea of my sister facing legal consequences. Years of conditioning to protect her, to minimize her actions, to accept blame myself, all rose up in a wave of conflicted emotions. "Is there any other way to handle this?" I asked hesitantly. "Maybe some kind of warning?" Officer Sarah looked at me with understanding but firmness. "The law is clear on this. The marks on your son's body constitute criminal child abuse. We cannot just issue a warning." but I understand your confusion right now. It is normal to have mixed feelings when reporting family members." While the police continued their work, I sat with Noah in our car trying to comfort him while processing my own shock. I called Ryan, who immediately booked a flight home for the next morning, his voice tight with controlled fury when I described what had happened. "Take Noah to the emergency room to have those welts properly documented and treated," he instructed. "I will be home as soon as humanly possible." And Cassandra, his voice softened. "I am so proud of you for protecting our son." Following his advice, I drove directly to the nearest hospital. The pediatric emergency room staff were incredibly supportive, treating Noah's injuries, while a social worker named Melissa spoke with me about next steps. She provided resources on family trauma, child therapy options, and information about restraining orders. "This is not your fault," she emphasized, seeing my guilty expression. "You left your child with family members who should have been trustworthy. What happened next was their choice, not yours." Still, I could not help replaying every decision that had led to this point, wondering if there had been signs I should have recognized sooner. The pattern had been there all along: the disregard for boundaries, the entitlement, the casual cruelty justified as just how our family is. As Noah finally fell asleep in the hospital bed, exhausted from the trauma and examinations, I made a series of phone calls. First to my boss, explaining that I needed emergency family leave. Then to a lawyer a colleague had recommended when I mentioned past issues with my family, scheduling an appointment for the following day. Finally to a close friend who lived nearby, asking if Noah and I could stay with her until Ryan returned, not feeling safe, returning to our home alone in case my family decided to show up. Throughout these practical arrangements, my phone buzzed constantly with messages from my parents, alternating between guilt trips, anger, and pleas to drop the charges against Melanie. I silenced the notifications without reading most of them, unable to handle their manipulation on top of everything else. By midnight, Noah and I were settled in my friend Bethany's guest room. He had finally stopped asking if he had done something wrong, if Aunt Melanie was mad at him because he was bad. Each question broke my heart anew, revealing how deeply children internalize abuse even when they are blameless. "You did nothing wrong," I repeated, stroking his hair as he drifted off to sleep. "Nothing at all. What happened today was wrong, and it was not your fault. Mommy and Daddy will always protect you." Once he was asleep, I stepped into the hallway and allowed myself to cry for the first time since the incident, muffling my sobs with a towel so as not to wake him. I cried for the trauma Noah had experienced, for the family relationships that were irrevocably broken, and for the little girl I had once been, who had never been protected the way I was now protecting my son. Bethany found me there and wordlessly pulled me into a hug, letting me release years of pent-up pain. When the storm of tears finally passed, she helped me make a list of practical next steps: therapy for Noah, legal protection, security measures for our home, and a plan for limited or no contact with my family moving forward. "You are not alone in this," she assured me. "Ryan will be home tomorrow, and you have friends who love you. Whatever happens next, you have support." In the darkness of that guest room, watching my son sleep, I made a promise to myself and to him. The cycle of abuse and enabling that had defined my childhood would end with me. Noah would grow up knowing his worth, protected from those who would harm him even if they shared his blood. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time I felt absolute clarity about the path forward. My phone buzzed again with a message from my mother. "Family should stick together no matter what. You are making a terrible mistake." I typed a response I never thought I would have the courage to send. "I am protecting my family. Noah is my family, and I will never allow anyone to hurt him again, especially not you." With that, I blocked their numbers, turned off my phone, and lay down beside my son, my arm protectively around him as we both fell into an exhausted sleep. Ryan arrived home the next morning, his face tight with worry and barely suppressed rage. The moment he saw Noah's injuries now darkened into unmistakable bruises, he broke down, gathering our son into a gentle embrace that carefully avoided his tender back. I watched them together, drawing strength from Ryan's unwavering support and the fierce love we both felt for our child. "We will get through this," he promised, reaching out to include me in the family hug. "All of us together." Our first step was meeting with the lawyer, Catherine Reynolds, a family law specialist with experience in child protection cases. With Noah occupied in a playroom under the watchful eye of an office assistant, we detailed the history of my family's behavior, the escalating incidents, and finally the belt attack. Based on what you have described in the police report, we have strong grounds for a restraining order against your sister, Catherine explained. We can include your parents as well, given their role in enabling the abuse and attempting to prevent you from reporting it. She outlined our options, clearly pursuing criminal charges against Melanie, filing for restraining orders, and documenting everything for potential future legal actions. The district attorney would make the final decision about prosecuting Melanie, but our cooperation would be essential if the case moved forward. What about custody? I asked the question that had been haunting me since the incident. Could they try to claim we are unfit parents because we left Noah with them? Catherine shook her head firmly. There is zero chance of that succeeding. You made a reasonable decision to leave your child with family members with no prior history of physical abuse. When abuse occurred, you immediately protected your child, sought medical attention, and reported the incident to authorities. Your actions demonstrate exemplary parenting under difficult circumstances. Her reassurance lifted a weight I had not fully acknowledged. The fear that somehow my family might manipulate the system to punish me for standing up to them had been lurking in the back of my mind, a residual effect of years of gaslighting. As we left the lawyer's office with a clear action plan, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. It was Detective Martinez, the lead officer on our case, calling to inform me that Melanie had been formally charged with child abuse. She had spent the night in jail before being released on bail that morning with conditions including no contact with Noah or me. Your parents posted her bail, he added. And I should warn you, they seemed quite angry. We have advised them not to contact you, but you might want to take extra precautions. His warning proved prescient. That afternoon, as we were settling Noah in for a nap at home, a loud pounding at our front door startled all of us. Through the security camera Ryan had installed that morning, we could see my father standing on our porch, red-faced and agitated. "Open this door, Cassandra," he shouted loud enough for us to hear him through the walls. "We need to talk about dropping these ridiculous charges." Ryan moved protectively toward the door while I stayed with Noah, who had begun trembling at the sound of his grandfather's angry voice. Before Ryan could respond, my mother appeared beside my father, her face streaked with tears. "Please, honey," she called out in that manipulative tone I knew so well. "Your sister could go to jail, her career will be ruined. Is that really what you want for your own flesh and blood?" Ryan activated the intercom system. "Harold, Eleanor, you need to leave our property immediately. We have a security system recording everything, and you have been legally advised not to contact Cassandra or Noah." "Do not tell me what to do at my own daughter's house," my father bellowed. "This is a family matter, and we will resolve it as a family." "Your family business included beating a 6-year-old with a belt," Ryan replied, his voice cold. "So, no, this is not something you get to handle yourselves anymore. Leave now, or we call the police for violating the no-contact order." After several more minutes of threats and pleas, they finally retreated to their car. As they pulled away, my mother pressed a handwritten note against the passenger window. "Think about what you are doing to this family." The irony of her concern for the family now, after years of ignoring the harm done to Noah and me, was not lost on either of us. Still, the confrontation left me shaken, second-guessing myself despite knowing intellectually that I had done the right thing. "They always do this," I told Ryan as we checked on Noah, who had finally fallen asleep despite the disturbance. "They make me doubt reality, doubt myself until I give in just to have peace." "That stops now," Ryan said, firmly holding my hands in his. "We document everything, we follow the legal process, and we put Noah's well-being first always." Over the next few weeks, the legal machinery moved forward with agonizing slowness. We obtained temporary restraining orders against Melanie, my father, and with more reluctance on my part, my mother. Noah began seeing a child therapist specializing in trauma who helped him process his feelings through play and art therapy. Ryan and I started counseling as well, learning how to support Noah while managing our own anger and grief. My family's response evolved from direct confrontation to a more insidious campaign. They began contacting mutual friends and extended family members, spinning a narrative that painted me as unstable and vindictive, exaggerating a minor disciplinary incident to punish Melanie for perceived childhood slights. Some relatives believed them reaching out with messages urging me to forgive and forget for the sake of family harmony. Others, particularly those who had witnessed my family's dynamic over the years, saw through the manipulation. My cousin Rachel, who had observed Melanie's preferential treatment firsthand during our childhood, called to offer support. "I always knew something would break eventually," she confided. "The way they treated you was never right, Cassandra. For what it is worth, I think you are doing the right thing now." Her support, along with that of several friends who rallied around us, provided islands of validation in a sea of doubt. Each day brought new challenges. Noah having nightmares, my own anxiety attacks when faced with decisions my family would previously have criticized, the constant vigilance required to maintain our boundaries. The most difficult moment came when we received notice that Melanie had accepted a plea deal reducing the charges in exchange for mandated anger management, community service, and probation. She would avoid jail time, a fact that my parents immediately used to renew their pressure campaign, arguing that since the legal system had shown mercy, I should do the same. "The case is resolved," my father said in a voicemail that violated the restraining order. "Time to put this nonsense behind us and be a family again. Your mother is heartbroken and Melanie has suffered enough public humiliation." Not once in any communication did they express concern for Noah's well-being or acknowledge the trauma he had experienced. Their focus remained entirely on protecting Melanie and restoring their preferred family narrative, one in which her behavior was excused and my concerns dismissed. After consulting with our lawyer and therapists, Ryan and I made the difficult decision to maintain the restraining orders and continue our no-contact policy, at least until significant evidence of change appeared. Noah's therapist emphasized that forcing him to interact with people who had hurt him or failed to protect him would only deepen his trauma. "Children need to trust that the adults in their lives will keep them safe," she explained gently. "Right now, rebuilding that trust with you, his parents, is the most important thing. Adding complicated relationships with grandparents and an aunt who caused harm would be detrimental to his healing process." Though the decision brought clarity, it also brought grief. I mourned the family. I had always hoped we could become the relationships I had spent decades trying to repair through my own contortions and compromises. Accepting that those relationships might never be healthy required acknowledging a painful truth. Sometimes the family we are born into cannot give us what we need, and we must build our family of choice instead. As the weeks turned into months, Noah began to show signs of healing. His nightmares became less frequent, and his therapist reported progress in his ability to express his feelings appropriately. The haunted look that had lingered in his eyes after the incident gradually faded, replaced by the natural curiosity and joy that had always characterized his personality. Our home, once a refuge threatened by my family's intrusion, became a truly safe space again. We developed new routines and traditions, intentionally creating positive memories to counterbalance the trauma. Sunday morning pancakes, weeknight board games, backyard camping adventures, each simple pleasure, a brick in the foundation of Noah's renewed sense of security. My own healing proved more complicated. Years of conditioning did not disappear overnight, and I frequently caught myself anticipating criticism that no longer came or apologizing for needs and boundaries that were entirely reasonable. My therapist, Dr. Landry, helped me recognize these patterns as artifacts of my upbringing. When children grow up having to earn love through compliance, they develop a hyper-awareness of others' expectations, she explained, during one particularly difficult session. Breaking that pattern requires consistent reinforcement that your needs and feelings are valid even when they inconvenience others. Ryan supported this process with remarkable patience, gently pointing out moments when I fell into old habits without shaming me for them. "You just apologized for asking me to pick up milk on the way home," he would note. "That is a normal request, not an imposition." 3 months after the incident, I received an unexpected email from my mother sent through our lawyer to respect the restraining order. Unlike her previous communications, this one contained no demands or guilt trips, just a simple request to consider family therapy if and when you feel ready. I shared the email with Dr. Landry, uncertain how to respond or whether to respond at all. After discussing it thoroughly, I crafted a careful reply also through our lawyer. "I appreciate the shift in approach. However, before considering family therapy, I would need to see evidence of individual therapy and genuine acknowledgement of the harm done to Noah and me. Until then, the boundaries we have established remain necessary for our well-being." No response came immediately, leaving me unsure if my conditions had been rejected or were being considered. In the meantime, life continued. I returned to work full-time, finding unexpected confidence in my professional role. Without the constant drain of managing my family's emotions and expectations, I discovered reserves of energy and creativity I had not known I possessed. Ryan received a promotion that required occasional travel, but unlike before, I no longer dreaded being alone with Noah during these times. We had built a reliable network of trusted friends and professional childcare providers, eliminating any need to rely on my family for support. Noah started first grade his natural resilience, helping him adapt to the new environment, despite the emotional challenges of the past months. His teacher, informed of the situation in general terms, reported that he was making friends easily and participating enthusiastically in classroom activities. "Whatever you are doing at home is working," she told me, during our first parent-teacher conference. "He is a remarkably well-adjusted child, given what you have described." Her validation brought tears to my eyes, confirmation that the difficult decisions we had made were bearing fruit in Noah's development. The path we had chosen, while painful, was the right one for our family. 6 months after the incident, my mother reached out again, this time with news that she had indeed begun individual therapy and had separated from my father, moving into a small apartment of her own. She included a letter her therapist had helped her craft, acknowledging specific harmful patterns without excuses or deflection. "I failed you as a mother," she wrote, the words I had never expected to see from her. "I prioritized my comfort and your father's and sister's demands over your well-being. I allowed and enabled behavior that hurt you throughout your life, culminating in the unforgivable harm done to Noah. I am not asking for immediate forgiveness or for the boundaries to be lifted. I am simply letting you know that I am doing the work to understand how we got here and to become someone who deserves a place in your lives if you ever choose to allow it." The letter left me breathless with conflicting emotions. Part of me yearned to believe in this transformation, to reclaim some version of the mother-daughter relationship I had always wanted. Another part remained deeply skeptical, remembering countless previous promises of change that had proven empty. After careful consideration and discussion with both Ryan and Dr. Landry, I agreed to a single supervised session with my mother and our respective therapists without Noah present. The meeting was scheduled at a neutral counseling center with clear boundaries and expectations established beforehand. Walking into that room was one of the hardest things I had ever done. My mother looked smaller somehow, her usual perfect appearance slightly diminished, her confidence subdued. The session was difficult but productive, with moments of genuine connection amid the necessary confrontation of painful truths. "I cannot promise immediate trust," I told her toward the end. "That will have to be rebuilt slowly, if at all, and my relationship with you will never come at the expense of Noah's safety or well-being." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. I just want the chance to try to be better for both of you." We established a tentative plan for very limited contact, beginning with occasional emails and perhaps progressing to brief supervised visits after several months of consistent positive interaction. It was a small opening in an otherwise firm boundary, a test of whether real change was possible. My father and Melanie remained unwilling to acknowledge their responsibility, continuing to pressure my mother to bring the family back together on their terms. She reported standing firm against this pressure, a promising sign of her commitment to change, though I remained cautious in my optimism. As we approached the 1-year mark since the incident, our family of 3 had found a new equilibrium. Noah thrived in school and activities his trauma addressed, but not defining him. Ryan and I had strengthened our partnership through the crisis emerging, with clearer communication and deeper trust. And I had discovered a strength in myself I never knew existed, the courage to protect what mattered most, even at great personal cost. The journey was far from over. Trust, once broken, rebuilds itself in tiny increments over long periods. Boundaries require constant maintenance and occasional adjustment. Healing follows no timeline but its own. Yet with each passing day, the weight of the past lightened just a little, making space for the future we were creating together. 2 years have passed since that terrible day when my sister beat my son with a belt. 2 years of therapy, boundaries, legal proceedings, and slow, painstaking healing. Looking back now, I can see how far we have all come, though the journey continues every day. Noah, now 8, has shown remarkable resilience. His therapist eventually reduced his sessions to monthly check-ins, proud of his progress in processing the trauma without letting it define him. He still has occasional nightmares, but they have become rare rather than regular. More importantly, he has developed healthy ways to express his emotions and a strong sense of his own boundaries, confidently telling people when something makes him uncomfortable. "You taught me that, Mommy," he told me recently after politely but firmly telling a well-meaning but overly physical soccer coach that he preferred not to be hugged. "You showed me it is okay to say no even to grown-ups." His words filled me with a complex mixture of pride and bittersweet reflection. I had learned that lesson too late in my own life after decades of suppressing my needs and accepting mistreatment. That Noah had internalized it at such a young age felt like breaking a generational pattern, turning my own painful experiences into protection for my child. My relationship with my mother has evolved into something I never expected. After a year of limited supervised contact, we gradually established a new connection fundamentally different from our old dynamic. She continued her therapy, diligently working through her own childhood issues that had contributed to her enabling behavior. She divorced my father, a decision that seemed to free her to become more authentically herself. Our relationship now has clear boundaries that she respects. She visits occasionally, always with advance notice, and interacts with Noah only under supervision. These visits are generally positive, though there are still moments of tension when old patterns threaten to resurface. The difference is that now, when I establish a boundary, she acknowledges it rather than dismissing it. "I am still learning," she admitted during a recent visit. "Sometimes I catch myself falling into old habits, but I am grateful you give me the chance to try again." My father and Melanie remain distant figures in our lives. The restraining order against Melanie expired after a year, but we chose not to renew it, instead maintaining a strict no-contact policy. She completed her court-mandated anger management program, but showed little evidence of genuine remorse or change, continuing to view herself as the victim of my overreaction. My father, unable to accept the new reality, made several attempts to re-establish contact on his terms, sending demands disguised as invitations to family events, always with the underlying message that I should get over it and return to the blank. A-fold. Each attempt received the same response: a clear reiteration of our boundaries and the conditions required for any potential future relationship. Their continued refusal to acknowledge the harm they caused confirmed the wisdom of our decision to keep them at a distance. While I sometimes feel sadness for what might have been, particularly for Noah's sake, I no longer feel guilt or uncertainty about these boundaries. Protecting my son's well-being is not just my right, but my responsibility as his mother. The most profound changes have perhaps been within myself. Through therapy and the unwavering support of Ryan and trusted friends, I gradually unlearned the patterns of people-pleasing and conflict avoidance that had defined my early life. I discovered my voice not just in standing up to my family of origin, but in all areas of my life. At work, I began advocating more effectively for myself, resulting in a significant promotion last year. In social situations, I became more authentic, letting go of the exhausting performance of being whoever I thought others wanted me to be. And in parenting, I found confidence in my own instincts and values, rather than constantly second-guessing myself against imagined criticism. Ryan and I strengthened our partnership through the crisis, emerging with deeper trust and more effective communication. We developed family traditions that honored what was important to us, creating the warm, supportive home environment we both wanted for Noah. The contrast between our family culture and the one I grew up in could not be more stark, a daily reminder that cycles can be broken. Perhaps the most unexpected outcome of this painful journey has been connecting with others who have experienced similar family dynamics. 6 months ago, I started a support group for parents establishing boundaries with toxic family members. The stories shared in that safe space have reinforced that family abuse often hides behind closed doors and cultural expectations of unconditional loyalty. "Family should stick together no matter what," is a sentiment that has enabled countless instances of abuse and mistreatment. What I have learned, and what I share with the group, is that healthy love has boundaries. Real family, whether biological or chosen, builds you up rather than tearing you down, respects your autonomy rather than demanding compliance, and prioritizes protection over appearances. The healing process continues for all of us. There are still difficult days, moments when old wounds feel freshly painful, or when I question the path we have chosen. But when I look at Noah thriving and secure in the knowledge that he will be protected, I know with absolute certainty that breaking the cycle was worth every difficult step. If you are watching this and facing your own impossible choices between family loyalty and self-protection, know that you are not alone. Setting boundaries, even painful ones, can be an act of courage and love, especially when you are protecting children. The path is not easy, but on the other side lies the possibility of genuine healing in relationships built on mutual respect rather than obligation. I would love to hear your thoughts or experiences in the comments below. Have you ever had to make difficult choices to protect yourself or your children? What helped you find the strength to make those decisions? Please like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with anyone who might need to hear that they are not alone in their struggle. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that healing is always possible, even from the deepest wounds.